And welcome back to the CODESHO podcast, everybody.
Hey, what's going on?
We've got Randy on the line here, and normally I'm the one that kicks things off, but Matt, I'm going to hand it right over to you to introduce your buddy here.
Yeah, okay. So this is Randy Knapp. He is actually I don't even know your title. Me and Randy have been friends. It feels like forever. We actually worked. We went to school together. We did a game project together for like 2.5 years. Run, and then we were working in Singapore together. Yeah. So what exactly is your title? Like I know you work at PopCap Games, but
Yeah, right now I'm a software engineer 3 at Electronic Arts. Yeah, I mean, title and role are kind of different things sometimes. But yeah, I'm a software engineer 3. It's like the highest non-senior role.
I see.
At EA, and then I'm mostly like UI gameplay programmer on recent Plants vs. Zombies title.
Oh, cool. Is there multiple? Yeah. Anyway, you're after. So I stayed in Singapore, and you left and did like a real job. And so now you are pro. You're like a 10 year because that was about 10 or more years, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And you are like an industry veteran. You've been living in Seattle.
Yeah.
You worked at Signal for a while, right? I hope
Yeah,
to get
so
that
just
job
for viewers at home, I worked at Signal Studios, launched Toy Soldiers Cold War on Xbox 360 the same week that Bastion launched, so nobody heard of it. I helped ship Guild Wars 2. That was pretty great. I worked on Halo 5 for a little bit. That was not great. I worked at Fun Bits, where we did Fat Princess Adventures, a downloadable title for...
Did you work with Cameron Micca there?
Oh,
Did
yeah,
he work...
yeah.
Yo, awesome. Okay. I
Yeah,
wanna get him
Cameron's
on.
great.
Yeah.
That was downloadable for PS4, and then I have been at PopCap since then, working on mobile titles, namely Bejeweled Stars and Plants vs. Zombies 3.
Is Bejeweled Stars kind of like in competition with like Candy Crush? Or is it kind of like two different?
Yes,
I mean, it's like the
and
same
that's-
kind of
and
game,
that's
right?
why it did not do very well.
Yeah. Well,
And then we can talk about this more as well. But yeah, so you've been a designer for ever since I met you. Like that was kind of like the role that you were always like you always wanted to be. I think even on our game team you were lead designer.
I got into games from the design standpoint. So like when I was a kid, I would make Warcraft 2 maps. Like I would run home from school and I would jump on my 4K modem and it would go ear, and then I would connect to my buddy across town and we'd play a Warcraft 2 like custom map that I did, and then he'd tell me what was good and what wasn't, and then I'd fix it or I'd make another one and we'd play again.
That's so cool.
So I got into games through like the level design path. So first Warcraft 2, StarCraft, Warcraft 3, and then 3D level design like Half-Life, Counter-Strike, Day of Defeat. I don't know if you remember those, some of the old ones.
I remember the Hammer editor. Was that for Half-Life?
Yep. The Hammer editor.
Yeah.
It used to be called World Edit. Some really generic name until they renamed it. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into games. And I went to DigiPen. I was good at math and science and stuff, and I kind of always knew I wanted to do games. So when I went to DigiPen, I like didn't really have very much programming experience. I knew like HTML and some stuff, but like,
Because I mean, you're being like, from what I remember, a little bit modest, and we could go back to the beginning, but you were already making web pages, like you like because like when you got into
Correct.
Lua, when you got into Lua, which is like a scripting language that is used a lot in games. I remember you built out and you were giving presentations at school, and you had built out like a web page to like show people how to integrate Lua into their game engine or something like that.
I have no memory of this.
But
did. Yes,
he did.
yeah. So I like was into web dev because that's kind of like all that I like could learn in high school, right? They had like a web development class and like a multimedia class, and that was like about all the programming that there was, you know. So and I actually took that web development class after already dabbling in it a bunch myself. So like I already knew HTML and CSS and like a little bit of JavaScript. Funny story, in that class, what I really wanted to do was build a CMS without really knowing what a CMS was. And all I knew was HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like strictly browser side technologies. Cause this was way before Node. So
I could do it. Local storage.
It didn't work. But it got me interested. So like, I knew how to make web pages. Actually, technically, I started making web pages on GeoCities when I was
Oh boy.
Me too.
10?
Times New Roman. No,
Yeah.
Times Square. Sorry, Times Square was like the technology
Nice.
subgroup that you would get. Yeah.
Yeah, I made little fan pages for games I liked, and
Like
it
Diablo
was
2.
the best ever.
Yeah.
Actually, Mordheim. It was like a Games Workshop miniatures game. Anyway,
That's actually really funny that you bring up the story about only knowing like front end technologies and you wanted to create like some kind of CMS, because I actually had a very similar situation before I was really into programming, and I managed these. We've talked about them before. The little group of data entry people that I managed, and because I didn't have any experience with like what a back end language looked like or what it looked like to set up some server side application, I was like, okay, I know that like this person needs to see on their screen what that person sees, but how in the hell do I get it over there? And I ended up, without knowing it, I created like a database using Google Sheets. And like I found a way to like ping an API in Google Sheets to get that
Nice.
data to work together.
Did it work?
It totally worked.
100% the wrong way, but cool.
100% the wrong way. But I remember having another developer come in. He was only there for like a couple months, and he was like, it's actually amazing that you built this. This is a feat of engineering because you did this the hard way. There's a much, much easier way to do this, and you totally went about it the wrong way. Anyway, so I think that's funny. I was obsessed
That's
with front end
amazing.
stuff, and I just didn't understand, hey, you can program this on the back end much better than Google Sheets. Anyways, I'm curious, as a designer, how much of your like day-to-day job involves programming? I don't really
right
know
now,
what
100%. I don't do design at my job.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So game design, game development is pretty interesting. If you're at a real small studio, you wear a lot of hats. You make a lot of decisions because they have to be made.
Yeah.
If you're at a big studio, you're a specialist. It's the best thing to do is to be a specialist, because the more specialists they have on a big team, the more people with like high experience level in a particular area, the better, right? Also, there's kind of like an authority thing, right? Like, someone has to be responsible for the game design decisions, right? And the sort of the buck stops with somebody, and so that person, it's their job to be a designer and to own that responsibility. I certainly have given like, design feedback. I'm friends with the designers. We say, I was like, this is bad UX, or this is like, this could be better or whatever. But they also have like a wider scope of the game on a big team. They have a bigger understanding of like long-term goals and like leadership's goals and the money people's goals and stuff. And so I don't have to keep any of that in my head. I just have to focus on the engineering part. And it's big.
The designers think about that stuff. Is like,
I mean, yeah.
I guess so to a certain extent. Is the design, because you have been listening to our podcast a little bit, and we talk about a lot of the like obviously non-game industry stuff. So I am kind of curious about that. You must have like project managers or product owners. Is the product owner like the designer, or those are still two different roles?
It's still a little different. So when you guys say designer for your work, you're almost always talking about what we would call like UX designers. And like strictly UX designers, where game designers is kind of like a separate thing that doesn't really exist in your field, I think.
Do you do that part, or do you do the UX? What do you? He called you a designer, so I'm just curious. What kind of?
Like I said, I don't. I'm a programmer. I'm a gameplay engineer.
I was just wrong. I think of him as a designer.
Okay,
well,
so what is Matt
personally,
thinking
I'm a
about when he
designer.
calls you a designer?
I mean, I shipped a tabletop role playing game recently. Of my own design, and like I said, I got into games from the level design side.
Okay. Well, okay. So one thing I'm interested in then is you said that being at a bigger studio, it sounded like you said that was more desirable. Is that correct?
I just said that it's more desirable to be a specialist. The studio desires more specialists than more generalists when it's a larger studio.
I see.
Yeah,
Because that kind of concentrated skill and experience in one particular area is more valuable when that person doesn't have to be spread out on a bunch of different tasks
Yes.
across a bunch of
Yeah,
different areas.
Okay, so this isn't actually a whole lot different than episode 18, I think, that we were talking
The
about.
generalization versus specialization. Yeah.
Yeah, and working for small companies versus working for big companies. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Would you rather work for a big studio or would you rather work for a small studio? Doesn't matter?
I mean, it's like there's differences. I have experience working at very large and very small, and there's pros and cons. I worked on Halo 5. Halo 5 was made by 500 people, which is a huge team.
I really want to hear about this.
And it was very difficult for the team to maintain communication between everybody. The bureaucracy got in the way a lot. People kind of did their own thing without communicating to other parts of the team because your individual team was already 40 people, kind of thing. So, but then they produced Halo 5, which is a huge game with tons of content and lots of stuff, right? Like it's hard to manage, but they steered a giant ship, out to sea, I guess.
Yeah.
I've been on a team with just 20 people. My first game at Signal was just like 20 folks, all across a variety of disciplines. And I, did UI art for some stuff because it needed to get done. And I did a bunch of UI stuff, and I did gameplay stuff, and I did tools, and I did this and that and the other thing, which is fine. There's a couple of things. At the small studio, you get to touch a lot, and you get to be really responsible for a lot. You can really make huge changes to the game. You bring a lot of yourself to more of the game, but in a negative way, the negative ego of people affects more of the studio in a small studio, right? Like if you imagine one person who's awful to work with because they are an egomaniac, and they affect 6 people on a regular basis. That's a huge portion of the studio in a small studio. So that's like you were talking about in another episode. That's I left because of a manager. I left because of a work environment there, even though working on a small team is pretty fun.
At Bungie or
that was at
the first
Signal.
company?
At
Signal. Okay.
Yeah. Bungie was a different issue. And I wasn't at Bungie. I was at 343. So after the Microsoft sale.
Okay, yeah.
So I wasn't at Bungie. I was at 343, and I was like going through a divorce at the time and pretty depressed. So it was just not like a good time for me. I was not very productive there. I don't think that the technical management helped. I don't think that they were I think there was some serious technical mismanagement, but that was not really a good time for me.
Okay, so whenever you were there, did you get to see Halo 5 from beginning to end, or did you leave early or come in late or anything like that?
No. I definitely I worked there less than a year. I worked there in 2014. I think it came out early 2015.
Okay,
so I was more towards the end of development.
So just because I can relate this to some of the stuff that we've done recently, at any point during you working there and working on Halo 5, did it ever seem like this is such a disaster, this is not going to go out on time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I want to...
I've kind of felt that at every game company I've ever been at. That's fair. Not because it is, but because man, making games is... it's a beautiful mess.
I mean, just because like we've worked on stuff too that was big and maybe not as big as Halo 5, but big.
I've never worked on anything that big.
No, I have. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess some of the stuff that we've worked on has seen millions of users.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah,
I mean,
from that perspective.
And we've thought like, this is not going to go out on time. Maybe we get it, maybe we don't. I mean, we're a little bit. I was going to say maybe we are a little bit more. The pressure isn't as much on us as it is game companies because we can have something go out maybe a day or two late. But I take that back because Cyberpunk has been pushed back months and months and months and months.
And they just got death threats agaget them.
For that's a disaster.
Yeah, here's the harder thing about games that I've always said. I don't even know if I came up with this, but our job as app developers, we do have to make something that works. Like any programmer has to make something that works that doesn't crash, right?
Yeah.
And we, the company, when I say works, if you are working for Walmart and you're building a store app, it has to be that store app. Or if you're working for a fitness company, it has to show that fitness. For a game, it has to work. No bugs.
Yeah.
standard, right? And 60 frames a second, which is already hard, or maybe 120. But it also has to be fun. Ugh.
Yeah. I was about to say that.
That's the hard part that we don't have to worry about. It's like if I built some registered agent like software, so like people could manage their like if they owned like an LLC or something, they could manage when they have to submit papers. And it's like nobody cares if that's fun. They just need their notifications, and it's like, yes, okay, I got this notification that says I have to submit this document to Nevada, whatever.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is like with an app like VShred or any other app that we've worked on, that you can kind of change direction a year down and be like, yeah, this is not really working for us. We really need to kind of change the entire way the user experience works. If a game is kind of a bust from the beginning, you can't go fundamentally change the game.
Yeah. Have you experienced anything like that where the game direction kind of changed?
Or just a
so
game.
I was on Guild Wars 2 for the live launch and like supported it for about a year.
Okay.
And the Guild Wars 2 fan base is incredibly loyal, incredibly vocal. I think you get that with any fan base, but this fan base was particularly involved and really wanted it to be good and really had lots of opinions. So I feel like they did a really good job at taking the feedback for what it was, making good business decisions, and were able to pivot when they needed to.
Okay.
I have also been part of projects that got almost done, and somebody at the top kind of said, "This isn't actually the direction we want to go. We didn't see the kind of numbers we wanted to see in our tests, and so we're gonna take it back to the drawing board."
Or like just
Dang.
the project will just get like scrapped? Or
Not quite, but
roughly
I've
scrapped?
actually never been on a canceled project, but this project was like pared down to a small team to reimagine it kind of from the ground up, reuse assets and stuff. But
Interesting.
yeah,
That's tough.
Has the because I'm sure you've seen this, especially if you worked on the Bejeweled app. Has the over microtransactionization of the games industry made it any less fun to work in?
that's a very good question.
he can't answer that.
The answer is yes. I love games. I love making games. And I love playing games. But I have never worked on a game that I actually play. I've made an MMO. I'm not an MMO guy. I've worked on a shooter for consoles. I'm not a shooter guy. And now I've been in mobile for a while. I have no games on my phone at all. I don't play games on my phone. There's two things that's good about this. One is I have an arm's length objective view of the game, which means when I go to the designer and I say, "Hey, I think you should change feature A to be this different way. I think it would be better if it was A." And they go, "No." I can go, "All right, whatever. No problem. Just give me the spec and I'll make sure it's the best that I can do as an engineer," right? I can focus on creating really good software and really good tools for designers and focus on a lot of the things that I like to do, which is collaborate with designers and artists and make their jobs easier. And if the game isn't as fun as I think it is, then it's okay. I don't care. On the other hand, you still lose a little bit of passion for the project. If I was working on a game that I loved, that I was really excited for, and I really wanted to play, I think that would change a little bit of the fundamental way that I view the development of it. And maybe it'd be more stressful. I don't know. But I'm definitely a little tired of, I call it like design by profit.
Yeah.
The goal of the design is to make money, not to be fun. And I think this is overall a detriment to the games industry. No, it's not. It's very hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge anyone wanting to make money. I personally don't have any problems with loot boxes. I don't think they're gambling. I don't think they're targeting child gambling, or some people are very up in arms about it.
I've heard about some of that stuff.
But they're designed to be fun in the way that slot machines are designed to be fun. People lose a lot of money to slot machines, and they play slot machines. Lots of people play them.
You did just compare it to gambling. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, that's
not
I
game.
did.
No, some people have said that about the loot boxes or the loot crate.
No, yeah.
Yeah, because you're paying money in the hopes that you get something.
I was just joking because he had said that it's not like gambling, and he was like, it's kind of fun in the way that a slot machine is fun. I was just picking on you.
It's not technically gambling,
Yeah.
but it hits all the same emotional notes that gambling does. So I can get why people can be upset about it, right? That being said, to answer your question, I wish every game could be just fun and make money. It's not actually the reality of the market. There are ways to make money in the games industry, and not all of them are by making the most fun game. Right now, we're in a place where making content is extremely expensive. You have to pay many professionals many months to create content for games. So designers and project owners are trying to figure out the best way to make games that make money, that keep players retained over time without having to make new content for them or make minimal content, right? Yeah. Like imagine if, Skyrim, you guys have both played Skyrim, so I have a reference here. So you got Skyrim, and now I've played an absolute ton of Skyrim, and I keep going back because it's an enjoyable game to explore. But imagine if, like, in order to maintain Skyrim as a game that people played constantly, they had to constantly make new regions, like add new regions. Like at some point it's like unsustainable. Your user graph is just going to keep dipping. That's just like the inevitability of the games industry, that you're not going to be able to retain everyone all the time. And so you're going to make less and less money, and you need to still spend the same amount of money making more content and more content and more content. And so on one hand, I get it, right? I want people to be successful in this industry as industry professionals, people making products that people want to pay money for. But at the same time, I also want to play games that are fun. So, I have conflicts.
Our mutual teacher, Prasanna, he worked at Nintendo. He was like technical director on a whole bunch of GameCube games, and he was almost promoted to vice president as like a side story. So he's like a good authority on games. He also never played games. He didn't. He's like, no, why? He studied computer graphics, and he was a really smart guy. But he didn't play games. What games do you like? I don't play games. Probably said it extremely serious and scary because he was.
And yet he has several patents for technologies to render, like special, unique render technologies that he invented.
Yeah. So, but he didn't play games. So like it's not necessarily a bad thing. I didn't work. One of the apps that I built, I did use, which is nice. That is, to me, that is also kind of the dream. Like, it's not fun. I worked on a gambling app, like a sports betting app, and I don't do sports betting. I didn't even understand the math behind it, which we didn't need to for the app because there was a gambling engine. And then, like the registered agent thing, I didn't own a company at the time. And now we own a company, technically. CODESHO LLC. For the podcast. So maybe I should get that. But and then the app that we were working on recently, I mean, we're still working on it, I guess, but like I did use that. That's fun. But so it's I understand what you're saying. It is nice to want to use the thing that you're building, and hopefully you can put more into it. It doesn't mean that you won't put in as much as you can for something that isn't fun. Like you seem to be very much like me and Cole as well, where part of the fun is just the programming, just building out this thing. So.
Yeah, the only thing that I even have, like, because I'm just trying to compare all of this to my experience, and the only experience that I have here is the game that I built. And
he built a couple of games.
Everybody knows about Desert Siege. It really took the world by storm, so I'm sure that everybody knows about it. But it was tough because that game is slammed with ads. Like, I hate to say that, but it really is. I have a lot of ads in there. Like, every other wave, you're going to get an ad. And basically, it got to the point where I was like, well, I want to grow the user base. I want to kind of market this game a little bit. I want people to see it. I kind of want to learn about this industry. But unfortunately, this is just not worth it if there's not some monetary reason to do it. And that was ads. And I get a few reviews that say this game has too many ads or whatever. And obviously with any other game that has a bunch of microtransactions, people are going to complain about that. But there's kind of been this shift in the games industry, and I'm kind of curious to see what you think about it, Randy. But like, obviously now companies are more focused on the kind of longer game of like releasing content after the game is released, releasing DLCs and stuff, releasing loot crates and stuff like that. Whereas before, when you ship the game, that's the game, and that's how you made your money. And obviously, game companies were successful prior to the internet and microtransactions and DLC. So what does that look like? Like, what does that shift in the games industry sort of?
We call it games as a service. So like the idea is that the game is going to ship, and the idea is to attract and retain users and then some percentage will monetize. I don't know. There's pros and cons. It's a strategy to make money in the games industry. I think that probably one thing we didn't see in the days before microtransaction and internet distribution and stuff was how many people failed. How many games didn't launch or launched and then failed because they didn't sell. And it was harder to even get the startup capital to do a game at the time. You needed professionals with real serious programming experience. Graphics got better, which meant art got more expensive to make.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, like, I mean, I guess it's kind of the same with what we're dealing with now on like the non-gaming side, where it used to be where like anybody could put up like actually I had a friend who made a color picker, and he got like a ton of traffic to his site. This was like 15 years ago or whatever. He just made a website that had a color picker that would tell you like your RGB, or like hexadecimal values, and he got a ton of traffic to that site. And it probably didn't take that much work to do, but like nobody else did it at the time. And now there's so much stuff out there that you not only have to make that thing first, you also have to be really good. And I guess that's just that feels like related to games, where in the old days it was still difficult. Of course, I'm not going to downplay how difficult it would have been to make Warcraft 1, for example, or like Doom, right? Actually, they didn't even have DirectX back then. But now, like, so there's still like a ton of technical knowledge, but Doom, the original Doom was made with what, like 6 people, 4 people?
Something like that.
And
I mean, one of whom was like a verified genius, but yeah.
Yeah, John Carmack. I mean, some people say 2 people because some people really love Romero's levels.
Sure.
I don't know what
That's
you
fair.
think about that. I don't know what you think about that. If you read the book Masters of Doom, everyone they keep talking about John Romero's levels being like just so amazing, and then I went and I looked, and I was like, I guess. I mean, I couldn't have done it. To be fair, I couldn't have done it. But it's like it didn't seem like they were special. Anyway, but now we're talking about Skyrim, where like there's tons of different character models, like the art and like the scale of it is huge, and the tools. I don't even know how they make where it feels like infinite quests or whatever. Like it's a whole different beast. It really is.
Yeah, and all the content, like Skyrim, all of the like interactions that you have with people, it's insane. I cannot understand it.
The hours of voice work alone.
Oh, there you
right?
go. Yeah.
You know, it's incredible. And so right now what's kind of cool, however, is that with Unity and Unreal, like the Unreal's free for everyone. The full Unreal 4 is free for everyone until you make like $100,000, which is awesome.
Deal.
Anyone can like just start making some games, and so we're seeing this resurgence in indie, low fidelity, 8-bit remix type games, because it's the kind of content that may be created quickly. You can work on a small team because you have the whole engine tech for free, which come with tools and all kinds of stuff, and you can ship on Steam for free. So you've got distribution covered, you've got engine tech covered, you need an idea and some programming skills, and you can go out and make a game today.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think we've talked about this a little bit before. There's this book called The Long Tail, and it's about business, like business strategy, and it's like, it's like asymptote, like it's like a graph where like the biggest companies in the world, let's say like Apple and whatever, Google, they are making obviously billions and billions of dollars. But then but it drops down. But that long tail, it's like an asymptote where it gets closer and closer to zero, and but never touches, right? And so the whole point of the book is you don't have to compete with Google. You don't have to compete with Apple. Go somewhere down that long tail. Find your 1,000 true fans, and you can make a living doing that cool stuff. So that is the benefit of how the tools are free and anybody can get into it. Like, you don't have to make $1 billion. You don't have to make $1 million. If you can make, $40,000 a year, I don't know, $40,000 or $50,000 a year working for yourself, doing some cool stuff that you really like you could lead a pretty sweet life.
Yeah, and I mean,
I need to interject here.
Okay.
Man, yes, in theory.
That's true.
There is
yes.
so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
You can make beautiful stuff that you care about, that is fun, that is rock solid. And if you don't get the eyeballs on it, if you don't get people to
Absolutely.
see it, if it doesn't rise to the top of the, dare I say it, cesspool of Steam, free Steam games, then maybe you don't make any money at all.
Well, so then the other thought is, this wasn't from the book, but you have your skill and you have your passion, and so you can do kind of what you or maybe all of us are doing. We're selling our skill and making decent money. That's the fun part about being a programmer, is you do get decent wages, and then you, as a side project or whatever, it might never make money, but as long as you're also doing this fun thing, to help lead to help give you an enjoyable life, that's at least one other option. But yeah, because I agree, just because you make a game, I made this sweet, quote unquote sweet game engine on iPhone, and I haven't really seen any games for it, but I don't expect anybody to care.
I thought it was cool. I made my little game, and it got 60,000 downloads. It's still not. I mean, there's realistically, that's nothing. There's very little activity on it, but it was cool, and it was cool seeing that some people had a good time on it, and I had a good time building it. Don't go check it out because you'll probably be very critical of it.
No,
I knew nothing, by the way. Yeah. I literally was just hey, I've never built a game. I work with a really cool game dev. I'm gonna go try my hand at building one with Sprite Kit, and it sort of worked.
It worked. People play.
That's how everyone starts. Yeah. So I recently just released a tabletop role playing game like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever.
We can link to that below.
We will.
Yeah,
It's
check
called
it out right there.
Zephyr, tactical role playing game. It's kind of like an adaptation of turn-based strategy games like XCOM, but for your tabletop. You sit around, you play. Everyone plays one character, and you fight cool strategy battles with people. It kickstarted last year. I raised $20,000, and it turns out it takes about $36,000 to make a book that I wanted to make. So over the course of this year and a half, it's been awesome. And but it hasn't made me any money, and maybe it will. Maybe it's got a long, really long, very tiny tail. But for me, kind of like you said, working on a design thing that I had total control over, that was my brainchild, was amazing. A huge outlet for my design energies when I was very focused on engineering at work. And to be honest, I've got 3 groups of people in the Zephyr Discord who play the game on a regular basis and tell me about it. And
I'm in your Discord, and I get notifications when people are chatting, and you got some dedicated followers. I think that's awesome.
Yes, I got 5 fans, and that means a lot to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now on the flip side, on my professional life, I could try that, right? I could branch off. I've got some savings. I could go try and make my own game. I've been perfectly happy in my games development career to, like you say, kind of sell my skills to people that already have a lot of that other stuff taken care of. EA already has a marketing team. EA already has a vast network of games that have players that move between them and IPs that are recognizable, which get eyeballs. Man, IPs are incredibly valuable in the games industry because if I say there's a new Star Wars game, you just immediately have a million people who are interested.
I want that. I mean, actually,
Right?
I did play. It was because our mutual friend Bill, he was talking about Star Wars Squadrons. Is that the new one that just came
the
out?
new X-Wing TIE Fighter game?
Yeah. So like he mentioned that, and our friend Bill worked on the original X-Wing. He worked on X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Is that right? Which one did he work on?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was that one.
Yeah. So he grew up playing X-Wing, a TIE Fighter first, and then X-Wing, and then he got to work for LucasArts and build X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. So now they just recently came out with Star Wars Squadrons. And because he posted about it, I didn't know otherwise. I was like, oh, let me check that out. I didn't buy it.
Speaking of IP, getting eyes on an application, as it turns out, that also works in the regular app world. And the guy that I worked for at my last job, he was like, we're going to build a Star Wars app. And this guy, by the way, had this is a ridiculous story, but this guy just had all sorts of ideas. Our job was just to like bring his ideas to life that were never going to succeed and never go anywhere. Dan, I seem to bring
Dan,
but he paid you.
I listened to the Sean episode.
Yeah, but to say he paid us is kind of a little disingenuous. He didn't exactly pay us on time or
50-50.
fairly, and this is the same guy that said that we didn't deserve to get paid.
Sounds like he still owes you 2 weeks worth of pay.
Oh, absolutely, he owes me 2 weeks worth of pay.
We have a listener.
He owes me more than that.
I'm your biggest
Anyways,
fan.
Yeah.
remind me to show you sometime. He told us to build this Star Wars app, and he was like, no, he thought he was so smart. He was like, if we just build the Star Wars app, and I'll go meet with George Lucas or whoever, and if I show them this awesome social media app for Star Wars, they're gonna buy, and everybody's gonna do it. And
everyone's happy.
He had us spend like 2 months building this thing. It's actually really badass. Like the like login screen is like these lightsabers, and the password and email go in there. And whenever
You might have showed me that.
did I show you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah, we'll look later. That's funny.
Anyways, but he recognized that putting Star Wars on something is going to get you a bunch of downloads. As it turns out, Disney's going to try to sue you whenever you try to do that.
Because they know that if you're like, you can't just make money off of our intellectual property. You just can't do that.
I just thought it was so funny because at this time that we're doing this, there's all this. It's built now, but there was all this talk about Disney building a Star Wars section of Disneyland, right? So big deal. That's super cool. Obviously, that cost them a lot of money. And this little guy is like, they've never thought about a social media app for Star Wars. And you're like, guy, they're building on Disneyland. Are you crazy? Like, they've thought about this. Trust me. They're not going to buy your crap software. But whatever. You're paying me. Sort of paying me. Let's do it. So, anyways. One thing that I've also been thinking about.
Guys. Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's some of them. One thing I've also been thinking about that's interesting for the game stuff. So I've never... I had like a Nintendo 64 and I had a Dreamcast and all that. So I remember what these games are like. But as a programmer, I've never worked in a world where the internet wasn't mainstream.
Yeah.
So making a game and not having any analytics on how far your users are going, not knowing anything about user behavior sounds insane. And I'm sure that you can talk to that a little bit. Like, I'm sure that influences decisions a lot.
I mean, to be fair, I've never worked in the industry where the internet wasn't like incredibly popular. I mean, my first title was a downloadable Xbox 360 title. So I'm a little younger than Matt. So I don't know how much older I am than you, but
yeah, you're somewhere in between us.
I guess, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah. So, I mean, back in the day, it was like customer service, like literally phone calls to the number that was in the back of the manual kind of thing, where you'd get a lot of phone calls about a particular spot, and then maybe the developers would have to patch it. This is like way back in the day, right? Actually pre-internet, or they had to do things like tell people how to cheat in their game, like the little cheats that they left in the game. They had to tell people, okay, well, here's the code to get to level 6 because level 5 is apparently unbeatable if you do this particular thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never been in a place. I've never worked on anything where you couldn't ship a title update.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I didn't. I guess I wasn't trying to say you're old. I wasn't suggesting that you. I guess what I was asking is like how much does that data? Because
Like
it almost seems.
does EA pay attention? Or obviously the answer is going to be yes, but like
Oh,
how much
yeah.
do they pay? Look at his face.
Yeah. To what
Sorry.
extent?
Yeah, to what
So
extent?
we
do
have
they pay
a
attention?
telemetry department.
wow.
You know, multiple people who essentially what they want from me as an engineer is for me to fill up a database of stuff. And so I give them information about everything. Everything that every button that a user clicks on. I know what their user ID is, and I mean, it's anonymized, so I'm not like stealing their information, but like I get like user, you know, what level they are, what plants they're currently using, all that kind of stuff. And they use that for a ton of information, right? We use it for retention a lot. You know, they're like, well, we did this change, and like the database said that before we had this change, we had like a, 40% day 4 retention. I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt, but like, after we did the change, then we see we actually have a 44% day 4 retention. So that's great. We like saw a positive retention change, on that kind of thing. So they care a lot. I mean, they're a giant company that cares about the money. You want to care about the money, you got to see what people are doing and be able to respond. Did my like little company that we first launched?
Yeah, like did Signal do that, or did like 343?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, 343 definitely is going to have that stuff, but I think that at Signal there was like ways to hook into the like Xbox, like the Xbox system had some kind of stuff that you could like user statistics that you could track. But almost always, a lot of times we tracked it with achievements. So like, you would just look at percentages of achievements.
But also, it's also different. I mean, it makes sense why EA would look at it for, let's say, Plants vs. Zombies, and Signal wouldn't, because Signal for that toy soldiers, you've already bought it, right? In that case, it was like you bought it. Like, so maybe, like, in a way, obviously, like, this isn't a long-term strategy, but it doesn't matter if you quit playing after day 1 if you've already bought it.
Yeah. Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, but like for EA, they want people, like their long-term strategy is keep your eyeballs there, keep clicking, keep seeing ads, or I don't know how it's monetized, but whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that is going to change, your goals are going to change what your data tracking needs are.
Seems so impossible how they were able to like effectively monetize games back in the early 2000s when like right now like my buddies play like Warzone and oh my god, like just my buddy said, he told me, he's like, I put over $1,000 in this game. Just mind-boggling, like crazy, buying all these loot crates, buying all these upgrades, trying to like force his way to pay to win.
I have a family member on my Korean side, like a family friend who spent something like $80,000
on a game,
on like multiple games or something like that. Damn. And like, luckily his parents were, I guess, rich. I don't know. I don't know this person directly. It's like my sister-in-law's boyfriend or something like that. And his parents were rich enough to be able to get him out of that debt. But like, he had problems. He had problems with these games, and like.
So I had a buddy too. I'm curious how this much plays, or if this like plays into EA at all, or any of these bigger companies. I'm sure it does. What he told me, and I never thought about this as like a game business strategy until he told me. At first, it just sounded ridiculous until he kind of explained. It's still ridiculous after he explained. But he played a game like Clash of Clans or something. It wasn't Clash of Clans, but it was something like that. One of those games where you get with your buddies and whatever. And he said that he put like $10,000 in this game, ran himself into a whole bunch of debt. It was awful. And so at first I was just like, dang, that's awful. Like, why would you do that? You're an idiot.
Yeah.
But he's like, it's really genius, because he was trying to tell me, he's like, you're an app developer, you should make a game like this, whatever, and doesn't understand I can't go make a game like Clash of Clans. But regardless, he says their strategy is that they're not worried about you dropping like $5 on a coin pack or whatever. He said there's this little subgroup at the very, very top. It's maybe like 0.01% of their users, and these guys basically have to frequently spend money to stay at the top. Once you stop spending money, you fall out of the top. And so these guys, the whales.
Oh,
yes.
There's a term for it.
There's a term for it. So yeah, he's saying like these guys are obsessive, and like you know that when you release a game, if there's 10 million users, there's gonna be some small subset that are obsessive, and they have to stay at the top, and they will spend $100 a month or $1,000 a month to stay, probably like $1,000 a month to stay at the top. And he said he was one of them. He says once you get there, you have spent so much time working up to this that the thought of not spending $100 this month to stay there is just not an option. I'm not going to lose all of that work that I did. And so he said that's the strategy of these companies. That's how they make all their money, is this small group that's spending $100,000 a month to keep their position.
Oh,
Crazy, but genius.
I guess.
So-
And I'm sure Warzone is like that too, or any of these games.
Before we continue, I need to make it very clear that the views that I state on this podcast are not the views of Electronic Arts or Electronic Arts subsidiaries.
You don't have to
These
talk
are
about it. I
views
want you to get in trouble.
personal. These are my personal views about game development and game monetization. But yeah, I don't really find that very ethical. I think that we should
That's
make
obviously
ethical
what they're
games.
doing, right?
Yeah.
Not
I think
EA,
that-
but
Not EA. Whoever.
Well, there are EA games that depend on whales.
What's happening?
There are lots of free-to-play games that depend on whales, and I don't think that that's particularly ethical. I don't think that's actually a good strategy either. Like it's like maybe effective for a limited amount of time, but I'm a dreamer. I'm an idealist. I really want the industry to be full of people making games that are fun, that you can pay money to play the game.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard because I agree with, obviously, like, I agree with you. There's this book by Simon Sinek. I think I mentioned it before, like The Infinite Game, and he just talks about, like, when you're in business, like, ideally you're in it for the long run, right? Like when Steve Jobs was making that first computer, they were doing it to make money, obviously, but like their goal wasn't to do like a quick cash grab or whatever. And so now it's been 30, I don't know how many years. How many years? Yeah. Long time. And like Microsoft is like the same way. It's a better strategy. Doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but it's a better strategy if you can focus on, I guess, again, better is subjective, but if you're focused on the long term, and like gaining loyal fans, gaining good customers, that is a better long-term strategy. The problem is certainly how do you get there? Like if you're focused on thriving for the next 6 months, it's hard to focus on 6 decades or whatever.
I think that's the problem, is because like before, maybe in the early 2000s and prior, or maybe even pre-2010, like if you wanted to get into the games industry, you had to have some big company, some big studio to do that. And now there's all of these super ambitious like indie developers that want to release this game, but the only way that they're able to stay afloat is to do these little cash grabby sort of tactics to stay in business and hope that it really hits, There's the same thing.
Two alternatives that actually I think are pretty cool recently. The first one's going to get me in hot water with gamers, but who cares? The first one is the Epic Game Store. They had, they needed to take market share. They wanted to jump into the industry, into that like place that is dominated by Steam, right? Steam completely owns the PC market for that. GOG, like, it doesn't even really compete, right? So they wanted to jump in. So what they did was essentially sponsor indies. They said, we will pay you $1 million to make your game so long as you only release it on the Epic Game Store, to draw people into using our platform for a limited release. You have like a year before you can release it on other things. I've heard people say this is anti-consumer, and that's bull crap. Like, it's completely stupid to say that this is anti-consumer. We can get into why. The second thing is Microsoft Game Pass. I don't work for either of these companies, so I'm not like shilling for them or anything. They're not paying me to say this. Microsoft Game Pass is $15 a month to access like 100 games.
Yeah, I have
on PC. Of course, I have it. It's so good. It's PC or Xbox, on both for free, like for $15 a month. And I've spoken with developers of their first party studios, which are making these games, and Microsoft is very clear to them: make awesome games, make fun games, make games that people want to play.
Yeah.
Because the whole goal is to get people on Game Pass. Like, this game is on Game Pass, and I can get it because it looks awesome, and I want to play it. And now that I'm on Game Pass, I'm going to play your other games. I'm going to keep my subscription going. I'm going to tell my friend to play those awesome games. And I love that. Like, that to me is like emotionally revitalizing.
Oh, yeah. No,
you know?
no, that's a really good point. Yeah.
What's the argument for being anti-consumer?
Yeah. Why? I agree with you. It doesn't sound anti-consumer. What argument would people make? Why would they think that's anti-consumer?
So the definition that people use for their anti-consumer, what they mean by anti-consumer, is anything that a consumer dislikes. It's wrong. Anti-consumer is like the concept of anti-consumer is like polluting the land in order to sell you products, right? This is anti-consumer. This is actually a thing that damages the consumer in order to make our product.
So maybe a better example of this that everyone I think feels, because like that, I didn't know about the games world, but like how it used to be that everything was on Netflix, but now Disney came out with Disney Plus, and like I think DC, they own Marvel. DC has their own streaming thing.
And NBC does now, and Amazon, and everyone has their own streaming service. And now it feels frustrating because if I want all the content, I have to pay for all the streaming services. Yeah. This is just a capitalist market, right? It's all it is. It was a market that was dominated by one thing for a long time. And now to compete in the market, people have restricted their content to their platforms. Yeah. And I'm not a capitalist. I'm not like pro capitalism, but this is like pretty basic, like economics.
It just is what it is. Yeah.
I don't like the term anti-consumer because what if I like it and Cole doesn't? Well, we're both consumers, so that feels too general. So like that term itself bugs me, because like maybe I'm just like, well, I never really cared to get Netflix, but. Like I don't know. I didn't.
Part of the argument is that it reduces. How do they put it? It reduces the consumer's choices. It reduces the consumer's set of choices, which doesn't really have anything to do with anti-consumer behaviors. But like that somehow the company choosing to limit the market that they distribute this thing on is limiting the choices that gamers have. On the other hand, both Steam and the Epic Game Store are free, so it's completely ridiculous that
it doesn't sound like my choices are limited.
Required. But like let's use another example, right? Like I sell beer, right? I craft and bottle beer in my factory.
Do you really?
And
you don't, right?
I don't.
I did make beer once.
I'm making a hypothetical. Hypothetically,
okay, cool.
I craft and bottle beer in my factory, and I call up a distribution company and I say, what stores can you distribute my beer to, and how much is it going to cost? And I'm going to call up 10 companies, and I'm going to pick one. Yeah. And they're going to say, hey, we're going to enter a contract that while we're working together, you can't go use other distribution companies. You're part of your brand and part of our brand is that we're working together.
This is distributed by Anheuser-Busch or whatever.
Sure. Or even, some company that just ships it around and kind of markets your beer to bars and stuff. Fine. Yeah. We're in a contract that this is what we're going to do. You're going to use our service. And if you use a different distribution service while we're in business, that's going to be a breach of our contract.
Yeah.
How is that different at all? And that's like completely reasonable. No one's like, it's anti-consumer. I demand that this beer is shipped by every single distribution company simultaneously, or else I am having my rights violated. I don't know. These people drive me a little nuts. But like that's the kind of idea. Like why who wrote the rules that says you are owed a distribution of a digital product on every possible service, or on always the one that you want, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, sometimes PlayStation has PlayStation exclusive titles, Ratchet and Clank. And
we have a friend, his name is Dave. We won't go into, I won't like name him, but he really hates console exclusives. He thinks they are very bad for the industry.
Is this Dave
for that
R
reason.
by chance?
Dave R, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna.
Dave, if you're listening, I really like you, dude,
I don't.
but
Yeah, I don't know.
this
If,
is
I don't know if
we're
he
gonna argue
listens.
about this point.
I don't know if he is listening. I'd like to get him on the podcast too. Yeah,
That'd be fun.
that'd be fun. So,
Do you guys want to talk about programming?
yeah, actually, at the very least, I would like to ask, what would your advice be? Is it like this doesn't have to be like the last question, but if somebody wanted to get into programming, like me and you have a more similar story, and I don't know if you listened to the one where I talk about school. Like I talked about my experience at DigiPen, which I thought was great, but I don't know if it's necessary to get into what I've done now.
Right.
So, like, what are your thoughts on like how would somebody get started? Do you think it's a good idea to go to school? Like, what do you think about that?
I don't know anymore, man. School's so flippin' expensive. And okay. You actually talked about this in I think the one that I like just listened to.
Okay.
You talk about how you need to learn how to learn. And college is actually a pretty good place to learn how to learn. If just by like being forced to do so, right? I'm an overachiever. No, what's the right word? I'm a gifted, highly achiever kid, right? Who was in like a gifted program when I was young, and I like took all AP and honor stuff in high school because it was easy, and I didn't have to hardly work to get good grades and get by, you know. And then I got to college, and it like knocked me on my ass because it was hard.
I was gonna say because my experience in DigiPen was not like that, and from what I remember of you, it was not easy for you either.
No, God, no. So like I had to learn how to learn. I had to learn how to do good research, and I had to learn how to work on teams, and I had to learn how to depend on other people and ask for help when I needed it, and all those kinds of things that were valuable in that like that experience. And then there's a few things of like learning some underlying, like being able to take the time to learn some underlying concepts before you dive into just learning programming, I thought was really valuable. I always tell people that our like CS 100 class is actually invaluable. Learning how circuits work, learning how logic gates work, learning how you take logic gates to build memory and then binary and all that kind of stuff is like really valuable as a software engineer. But maybe is like too much for just like a coder who just wants to like get some stuff going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not going to make you better with the stuff that you're doing day to day. Like, obviously, we're not thinking about logic gates and hardly thinking about, I mean, we don't think about binary at all day to day. You might, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually just did an interview where they were like, all right, we're going to talk about C now, and we're going to talk about memory.
Can you talk about doing interviews? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about interviews. I love interviewing, by the way.
Okay. I just mean the fact that you did an interview. That's what
sure. We can talk about that too. But anyway, what was your question? What was I just talking about?
Oh, no. Just school. Like, is school...
Oh, yeah.
Like,
so is school worth it? Yes and no. It sounds like, Cole, you didn't have a very good experience at school.
No.
I think that's fair. I think that a lot of schools are not a good experience. And
I also didn't go to something like DigiPen. I went to like a community college.
Right. And I have some buddies that went to school for programming at a state school, and it was fine. It was a fine thing. They spent 2 years doing no programming because they had all gen ed that they needed to take care of. And then they spent 2 years writing little like pretend programs.
That doesn't sound fine.
Like, I mean, they learned how to program, right? Okay, like they learned how to program, and at DigiPen we like were forced to make giant projects with each other, and it was extremely a lot of work and hard. Yeah. So, however, everything we learned at DigiPen is available on YouTube,
of course,
the internet for free. Right? There are 100 white papers out there. There are 100 tutorials out there. I mean, I still Google, linear algebra stuff, and someone's written an article. How do you intersect a ray with a plane? So
The dot product, by the way. The answer is always
is
the
involved.
dot product.
It's always
Yeah.
the dot product.
Yeah.
So, do you need to go to school? No. Is some school valuable? Yes. Is some school harmful? Yes. If you don't want to go to school, you have to learn by yourself. And if you're not a good self-directed learner, that will be very hard.
What do you think about if you're not a good self-directed learner at the start? Do you think that is detrimental to becoming a programmer? Because I think I don't know the answer to that, but like we talk
Yeah.
about this all the time. You're constantly learning, and so
Yeah, it's
You
not going
have
to
to
work
be.
out if you're not.
yeah. So at the
So-
very least, if you have that skill.
But that being said, we've worked with some people that absolutely are not. And granted, they weren't successful, not really, but like you can wiggle your way into the industry, but you're never going to have any like long time rewarding career. But I
think
would
it's
say
like
that
this. When you get presented with a problem and you don't immediately know the answer, it's like if your first step is to go start looking, that's probably all you need, right? If
Yeah,
you've got at least that of okay, let's Google literally copy and paste the question
Yes.
I'm being
Yep.
asked, right?
Yep.
Let's Google what do I do if whatever,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
If that's like your initial response, that's probably fine. That like you need to have some of that like I don't know.
I call it intellectual curiosity. That isn't
Sure.
my term. I heard that somewhere else, but yeah, like you have to want to know, not just be like, if you're presented with that blocker, you're just like you can't give up. Like your first inclination can't be to give up.
Yeah, no, you put it great. If that's your first inclination, that's a really good sign. That's my first inclination with everything. By the way, my wife hates it. Anytime we're in an argument, why are we arguing? Let's just look it up. It's right here. Like, what are we even doing here? Yeah, she hates it. But that's pretty much me with everything. Like, if I don't know why are we sitting here debating it?
He was telling me
the answer's there.
I came over to his house one day before a podcast, and he was like, "Do you know how air conditioners work?" He was talking about air conditioners, and I don't even remember what it was. I'm sorry, but like for like 40 minutes, and I was like, "It's true. I did not know that." But he looked up a ton, and he had.
We would be such good friends.
Yeah, dude, I mean, my wife knows it. I can't, like, there's days where, like, I'll just be laying in bed and it'll be something like that. Or I'll be like, how does the furnace in the attic actually work? I hear it and, like, I can't go to bed. I'm thinking about it now. Or how do trees on mountains grow? Or I don't, like, whatever.
I donate money to Wikipedia every year.
Oh, nice.
And
yes,
thank you.
I actually do too, funny enough.
Yeah.
That's funny.
For sure.
I did it one time. Now they keep hounding me.
So say you're a pretty good learner, you're willing to like dive in and get more detailed answer to help you solve your problem. And you have enough critical thinking that you can take answers as they're presented to you and apply them to your specific case. This is like the problem of the Stack Overflow developer, right?
Yeah.
A full Stack Overflow developer. That they're like, yeah, I can code. I just Google it and copy and paste code until it works, right? To me, that's not programming. That's not computer science.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess whatever. Anyway, so if you have enough critical thinking skills that you can understand that the difference in the exact thing that you found is you need to pull the concepts out of it and apply them to your problem. And you're going to reach for new solutions. I think you're going to be fine. Second piece of advice, I guess, if you're trying to do it on your own is, okay, so I used to do these career days for middle school students. I would go in and I'm like the cool game programmer guy, right? Because games are awesome for 11 and 12-year-olds, right?
And
how
40-year-olds.
my presentation was always, these are the different kinds of jobs in the games industry. And then I would pull up my code. It was a little Flash asteroid game. And I would be like, all right, let's make a game together. Like, let's talk about
cool.
X and Y coordinates and what entities are. And like, hey, how should I make this game? Should I make the bullets go faster? Should I make there be more asteroids? What do we do? And then I would just kind of play with them with it and kind of show them how cool programming was. Because that like a moment where you're just learning to program and you like write code and it finally compiles and you run it and then it does that thing that you told it to do, right? That's magic, So I wanted these kids to feel it. But it's really funny. 11-year-old boys ask questions. They go, have you played GTA? And then the girls will raise their hand and ask a question. They'll say, I've designed 150 pages of a magical world that I've developed. How do I make that into a game? Middle school kids are just way different, right? And so what I tell these kids all the time is like, you can go make video games right now. Yeah. Go home, get Unity, get RPG Maker, get that weird puzzle piece programming language from Khan Academy or whatever, or whichever, code.org, whichever one that has that, like whatever. You can go and like make stuff right now. And then the last piece of advice I give them is that do not start by making an RPG. Do not start by making your magnum opus. Don't move on until you've made tic-tac-toe. Tic-tac-toe. I mean, can you think of all the things that are actually involved in tic-tac-toe? You know, you've got to translate input into like tile selection. You're probably not like ray tracing it, you know, but like, you know, you're not ray casting for it, but like you got to do that math. You got to figure out positioning. You got to figure out objects and object state and game state and all this kinds of things. If you're
building it in C, this was a challenge because like I would have my students build a version of tic-tac-toe. And, you know, we're learning just about functions and for loops and stuff, right? The problem is in C, like how do you pass in data to a function and have it modify that data? And the problem is they didn't know about pointers at this point. And I was like, we'll cheat. We'll make that global for now or whatever. Like, don't worry about that. Yeah.
And like you can make the ugliest, grossest, nastiest piece of code that runs tic-tac-toe and it'll run and it'll be buggy and maybe whatever. And that's fine. And you finish it and you get done and then you can move on to Connect 4, you know. Then you can move on to something just slightly more or maybe, you know, a jumper game or Asteroids, right? I think Asteroids is really good because it's all about like learning the kinematic stuff and writing that mini physics engine. Yeah. You can get away with pretty much just like point and sphere intersection.
That's exactly what we did in Singapore. Well, just all of DigiPen, like the classes that I taught. We always started with Asteroids, and then we would do a little platformer. There was no animation. You were like a little dot basically, and then you could do the jumping. You were a blue dot, and you would do platforming on little red dots. Like those were like the enemies, and so just really simple stuff. But
it was actually one of the things we talked about in one of the first episodes. I think it was called How to Learn, and one of the things that I said was exactly this, but maybe not in the context of games. But just find the smallest thing that you can do, and don't move on until you're done with that. Like make sure that you finish that. The curse of programming is never finishing anything.
It's so much better to just accomplish it, right? Accomplish it. But part of learning how to do that is to set reasonable goals.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something pretty rewarding about showing someone something that you built and not having to worry about if they tap that button when they're not supposed to. Just finish it. Just finish the dang thing. Just get it done. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
Now, so one thing that we kind of always talk about as well is just like programmers sort of what their path looked like getting in. So we've kind of talked about the fact that you went to DigiPen and then your first job was it
in Singapore with me. Yeah.
Oh, where?
Yeah, so I actually moved to Singapore with Matt before I graduated.
Yeah.
Okay. So what brought you to the fact that you guys both worked for DigiPen?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We were on the same game team. Sorry, he's going to answer the same thing. Yeah. We were on the same game team together, and you hadn't worked with the school at all, had you? But like we knew, like we were best friends with like the president's son, which I think helped with that. And so like, and we all just hung out together, like not the American president, the president of the school's son. He was in my grade, and we were just like learning programming as well. And so we were always just hanging out, and they needed some people to teach the continuing education stuff in Singapore. So yeah, like me and Randy volunteered. And
then your first job out of DigiPen was?
It was that Signal Studios job making the toy soldiers.
So okay, this is so interesting. So your first job out of school was teaching.
Yep.
This is so crazy to me. Like, I think this is cool, but
it was pretty crazy to me too.
Well, I mean, I say it. I say this all the time. No, I'm not trying to throw too much shade on DigiPen. I had a great experience at the school, but my feeling was they hired us. We were knowledgeable. Randy's a super smart guy. He was back then too. I thought I was really good. I had a good collection of books. I bought all the books. That was the type of student I was.
Doesn't sound like you.
Yeah, it does not sound like me. I'm still buying all the books. But they got us for cheap. That's basically. They had me for 7 years for cheap.
And what did well, first of all, how long were you teaching at DigiPen?
I only taught for 9 months.
He got out of there fast.
I'm different than Matt, I guess. I taught for 9 months, and they kind of ran us through the mud. I was working 80-hour weeks.
Oh, boy.
Was it? Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned that before because we would teach like the full 6-hour course during the day, and then they were having us teach the 7 to 10 classes like
at night.
Yeah.
And we were developing the entire curriculum from scratch by ourselves. And we were doing all of the grading, the test making and test grading stuff.
We were building that GTA clone, remember, that our boss wanted us to build? Do you remember that at all?
I can't believe they asked us for more work.
We didn't actually build it, but like they wanted this game engine as like a demo, which is kind of, mine was only 2D, but in the end, that's what I ended up building for DigiPen. A proper demo full of documentation where students could use in all of their game projects. But he wanted us to do this thing that was like, he kept calling it like a Vice City or a GTA clone, because you could walk around, like you would be walking around a 3D city, and it's like, that sounds it actually sounds insane, because that wasn't our full-time job. This was like in our breaks, which were like non-existent.
Jeez. And so,
as a 10-year industry vet, I would not put up with that.
like Sean.
So yeah, after about 9 months, I was like, look, I'm teaching people how to make games, and I am not making games myself. I don't have time, and so I want to go make games. That's pretty much what it was for me.
After all, that's why you went to the school in the first place. So then you made the leap, and I guess like the hardest thing for anybody, you have a weird situation that most people don't have, where you got a job right away and then kind of got to use that experience to get your next one. But what?
And then Matt recommended me to his friends who ran Signal Studios.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
my
okay.
friends. Yeah, my friends owned Signal Studios.
Yep.
And so, as I recall, you didn't even have a real interview.
I sat down with one of the founders of Signal Studios for lunch, and he was like, "Yeah, all right."
Nice. Well, this isn't going to offer much advice to anybody.
It's pretty tough. Yeah.
No,
I've interviewed a lot
Casanova.
of other places, but that first one did not count.
Yeah, that's fair.
So the advice is just have friends that know people.
Be friends with Matt Casanova.
Okay, so
actually
we're
good
being
advice,
flippant,
though.
but it's really good advice.
It really is.
It's
yeah.
one of those things is don't be a sycophant. Don't be a kiss ass, right? Like that's not what people want. You just be a kind, humble person. You guys talked about this in one of your other episodes.
We did. We talked about karma.
I like quoting your own stuff back to you.
You said you were watching it backwards to Patrick. You must have watched more than that.
You guys talked about humble people. In the very latest one, imposter syndrome is what you're talking about.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Anyway, you be a nice person. You work hard. You deliver. I mean, you do kind of have to deliver, right? Still, you can't be a slack off. I was a slack off for a while in a couple of places, and it hurt my career. But like, yeah, you make connections, and for most of my career, I got other jobs through connections.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Randy didn't get that job for free just because I said, I mean, I don't think it was really just because I said it. It was because I told my friends, hey, I've been working with this guy that would have been over 3 years at this point. He's a solid guy. He really knows what he's doing. Just give him, like if you can give him an interview, that would be awesome. Right?
Yeah,
and they trusted me. So, because I had known some of these guys for, 10 years or more, like since high school, like some of them. And so it was that you earned it. You just earned it in a different way.
In a different way, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. This is more of a personal question. You don't have to answer
Sure.
you don't have to answer with specifics, but just like in general, you've been so you've been doing this for how many years? Would you say?
I think 11 years now.
11 years. Okay, so over a decade, and obviously since you started, your income has definitely gone up. Obviously. Now, as of late,
Slight upward trend.
well, okay, so as of lately, like I mean, there's a lot of people. I read a lot about this on Reddit and other places. People talk about like kind of hitting that like upper limit. So like, are you there, or have you steadily increased over the last 11 years, or are you kind of at a plateau right now?
I've steadily increased over the last few years. There's a couple of things. When you go to a new company, you can almost always get about a 10% raise. That's just been my experience in the games industry. Raises within a company generally do not match that. But it kind of depends where you're at. I'm also very opposed to like salary secrecy, so I'm like more than happy to talk about like actual numbers.
Oh yeah, we talk about. I mean, like me and him talk about it, and I told you my old number, but not my new number. Yeah,
it's because I would be so jealous.
Maybe.
No, I mean I don't do this for the money.
Yeah,
if I was doing this for the money, I'd go make bank software or whatever. Like
yeah.
If that was the only motivation,
if that was
if that was my
yeah.
only motivation, I would
Yeah.
make way more money elsewhere. Doing boringer things. So I started the job at Singapore was like about 62,000 a year American. Mm-hmm. And 10 years later, I'm making like 132 plus stock options and bonuses.
Okay. And so, my question was going to be more like as far as like maintaining drive. If your drive is not fully motivated by money, then that helps. But just over 11 years, like how do you keep from, you had mentioned that at one point you had like kind of slacked off in your career a little bit. Like how do you, especially now that you've kind of gotten through that and you recognize that was bad, how do you like maintain motivation? And the reason I was asking about salary, and I mean that's the reason I was asking about salaries, because like if it has plateaued, is there other factors motivating you, or does the money motivate you? But it sounds like it doesn't. So what really is your motivation?
Family?
To a point, I really like being comfortable, right? Like I'm in a cushy job that I really like, that supports my family in a home and a place that, Seattle's not that cheap to live. So I'm quite happy that I have the kind of salary that I do. It buys comfort, not prestige, if you know what that means.
Sure.
And so as far as motivation goes, it's a little, I've been in a variety of different places in my career. I struggled early in the career because I was quite often afraid to ask for help when I was stuck. I would flounder instead of ask for help. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like just sort of not make any progress, keep banging my head against a wall. And then the guilt of spending 2 days not making any progress on a task made me want to ask for help even less, right? Then I would have to admit that I didn't get anything done for 2 days. And this is all very junior professional stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that really hurt me in the beginning of my career. There were probably some people who felt Randy's just not that productive, right? Sometimes he gets in these ruts where he's not productive. And I admit that I probably wasn't as productive as I could have been. Then kind of came a turning point. I think it was probably at ArenaNet, where it was like, just buckle down and ask for help immediately. There are really smart people at your company. Go get help, right? At first, you will be annoying, right? You will ask for help a lot, and people will be like, Randy asked for help a lot. And eventually you won't, because you'll have learned a lot of the stuff.
Because you've asked a whole bunch of questions.
Better. Yeah. And every time you ask a question, again, if you have some of that critical thinking mindset, the answer is not going to solve your problem. It's going to solve problems of that type.
Yeah.
For the future. And so, plus you just gain a bunch of skills, right? I got like way better at like navigating a code base to find the things that I kind of need. I got way better at debugging. I got like, my skills did improve over time.
Of course, yeah.
So, the next thing is maintaining expectations. I think it's really important that you are really clear with the people you're doing the work for about what you're gonna deliver.
You mean managing expectations?
What did I say?
Maintaining, I think.
Oh yes, managing expectations.
Okay. Yeah.
So when someone says we need feature X by Friday, and you don't think you can get it done, and you say, yeah, sure, no problem, and you bust your ass and you work overtime and you get it done, that's bad in my mind, right? What you should have said is feature X has too many features to get done by Friday. We either need to put more engineers on it, which only has diminishing returns, and or we need to cut features, or we need to push it until the next week. And so having the confidence to understand your own ability to get stuff done, what your own productivity level is, and to kind of confidently say, no, that's not a reasonable timeline for the things that you're asking for me to do, is a pretty important skill, I think.
Yeah, that's true. We do deal with that.
In regard, go on.
Go ahead. No.
In regards to reiterate what motivation, like those things create, the more that I did those things, the more I asked for help when I needed it, the more I set the expectations of what I knew I could achieve, the more comfortable work became. Not comfortable as in like stagnant, but comfortable as in not stress inducing, not guilt and shame inducing. And once I was at that point, it was very easy for me to be like, yeah, this is fun. I really enjoy my work because I'm having positive experiences at work where I'm accomplishing things and people are understanding, like are seeing that I'm accomplishing with the things that I'm promising. And so that was really the turn for me.
And when you can remove that stress, when the company or the bosses or whatever, the environment, when you remove that stress, you are actually more like productive and creative. Like productive might be not necessarily be like hours in front of the computer, but like you're creating, or like you're creatively solving problems and things like that. And like you're not just necessarily like watching the clock.
Absolutely.
To get out of there or whatever.
So one thing to add to the point of not asking a question earlier on, it's actually funny because I could think of a handful of times where maybe earlier in my career I was also like apprehensive to ask somebody a question about something because I thought I was going to look stupid or whatever. And as it turned out, maybe I waited a day or two and didn't ask. I got in the same situation where I'm going to look even stupider. And then I asked the question, and the senior developer, whoever, is like, oh, dang, no, this is like a much bigger problem. Like, thank you for bringing this up. Like, and it's like, oh, I should have brought this up earlier. It wasn't that I'm stupid. It's that, like, this is actually a huge problem that's bigger than me. This is going to require everybody. And so for anybody that's in that situation, it's a great piece of advice. Like, go ask the question. Don't sit there. And also, usually, if you're honest in the interview process and you got hired fairly, whatever that means, like, the senior developers or whoever, your managers, have expectations too of your level of performance. Like, they're not expecting you to be a senior engineer. If you ask questions daily, that's pretty expected.
And I think this is why it is important to be humble, because like if you come in bragging, I mean, interviews are always a little bit of a brag, right? You got to be careful with that. But like, if you come in bragging, and like, if I came into work every day talking about how smart I am, then when I actually do need to go ask them a question, I'm gonna have to like swallow my pride a little bit. Whereas if you just remove that ego right from the beginning, it's like, yeah, I'm confident in my work, but like, I don't know everything. Of course not. Oh, Cole, you know way more about iOS than me. Like, or just, you've been doing mobile longer than me. How would you solve this issue? Which is like, we did get comfortable talking about that, even though we're mostly working on different platforms. Like, yeah, so that is really good advice.
Yeah, we never shied away from asking each other even anything, even just opinions or whatever. I actually like when the guys that I work with now, the junior developers, ask me a bunch of questions. This is going to save way more headache whenever you submit that PR. Don't make us do a whole day of review once that time comes. Let's talk about it now. Let's make sure that you're on the right track. You're wasting I hate it when they tell me like, oh, I just don't want to waste your time. Like, I know you're busy. You won't hesitate to take 4 hours when we're doing the code review. Like, take 15 minutes right now to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
And like, if you're a senior dev, it's part of your job, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's par for the course.
I like had some junior developers under, like, not under me, not my direct reports, but I was mentoring them on my team over the last couple of years. And like, I kind of wish they would ask a lot more questions. Now that I'm thinking back, I probably should have really came out and been totally explicit with them.
Ask me a couple of questions. Yeah, ask me a couple of questions per day.
That's a good point,
all the time. Bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's a good piece of advice for senior developers. Encourage people to ask you questions.
There There was some,
eliminate that like barrier that they feel.
Yeah.
There was some restaurant, I forget because I don't remember what book I was reading, but it was some popular restaurant, and when they hire new servers, they say if you don't ask for help like at least 15 times tonight, then you will have failed. So like ask for help. Like you're not gonna know everything on this first night at this super popular restaurant. So you need to be asking for help.
Yeah.
Encourage that.
I had a situation actually at V-Shred when I first got hired, and they did have me working on something that I wasn't super familiar with, and but I was at the very beginning. I still wanted to prove myself, plus it was like really nobody there. I didn't have a whole lot of people to ask for help anyways, but anyways, there was this thing that the CTO put me on, and I was working on it, and I was really just trying to chug through it, like, and not really bother him too much. Plus, he's the CTO; you don't want to bother him, whatever. And then, like,
It's the same thing we're talking about.
so there was a couple of things, yeah, and like this is me only like 2 years ago, and I was still kind of doing this, but I was brand new at a job, so I was a little bit, anxious or whatever, nervous, and so there was kind of parts of the little task that I had that I kept kind of pushing off to the side, and I was like, how come back? I don't know why I don't know that, whatever that is that I need right there. So I kept kind of pushing it back, and maybe like day 3 or 4 comes along, and the CTO comes along, and he's like, hey, how's that task going? I was like, oh, yeah, it's solid, totally good. I think I'm going to have it delivered tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, but there's like this whole part that I didn't even give you. Like, what are you using to do this part of the feature? Like, you still need all this data. I was like, oh, okay, cool. But it was just like, I just felt like an idiot because I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here expecting that I'm going to find the answer to that problem as I'm programming, and I'm totally not. And he knows that too. So now I kind of just look like a fool for telling him, yeah, I'll have this delivered on time. He's like, yeah, you can't. Like, you literally don't have what you need to finish it. And I'm like, all right, I look stupid.
That's a valuable lesson.
Yeah, that's definitely a valuable lesson to learn. So we kind of, once we get close to the end of the podcast, one of the things that we do more than anything is just, it sounds like you got very lucky early on that kind of the cards fell right.
He worked hard. I don't like,
No,
that's
and
fair, but like, when sometimes people want to emphasize the luck too much, and like there was some open gates,
Yeah.
but he also worked hard. And I can vouch for that.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I'm saying this because I feel like I kind of fall into the same boat where, like, I worked very hard too. The cards did just really fall right for me. It's hard sometimes for me to offer advice on, like, I try to give the best advice we can. We've talked about, go do little freelance projects for indie art or music artists or whatever. Like, we've offered some piece of advice, but realistically, I also got lucky that the cards just kind of fell right. I fell into a job, got promoted into a programming position, and things just kind of worked out for me. It sounds like you also got pretty lucky in that regard. Obviously, both of us worked hard, but still, you've seen a bunch of junior developers obviously come into the industry and work their way up. What's the like number 1 or number 2 take home thing? Like, if you do this is going to help you out tremendously. You've offered a ton of really good advice already. So
yeah,
what's another good one?
What haven't I already offered? On the luck thing, I think I do, we got to at least say that, like, I'm a white middle class boy, which meant that, like, I was really pushed towards like STEM stuff and like had a ton of support from that. So that's like just like a leg up to start with. And then I was really lucky that I like had the dream of like, I want to make games. I want to make games like when I was 11. And so my parents were like, I guess we don't like video games, but I guess we'll support him.
What do you think about this now, Mom? Showing
yeah,
your
right.
Monopoly
My
money.
mom likes games now. But oh man, good advice that I haven't already said. Like the big one is go do it. Right, go do it right now. Yeah. Don't wait. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to learn how to program games. Right, like go do it. Go download Unity. It's free. You don't want to code? Go download Unreal. They have like a node-based visual scripting thing. You don't have to know how to program to get started. You should know how to program to use visual scripting. That's another episode, I think. So go get started. Don't be afraid to ask questions from people who are smarter than you.
I actually love all of this because I feel, not to like toot our horns, but this just reinforces a lot of the stuff that we've been saying from another perspective. Like, Get Started was our first episode. That was the whole premise.
That was exactly it. Yeah,
that was the whole premise of the first episode. Like, if you're interested right now, go do it. Don't wait. We wanted to do a podcast. The first episode was terrible. My mic sounded awful.
You're going in the wrong order. You're going in reverse order. It's gonna get
worse and worse.
Well,
That's
because
fair.
we just this is the advice that we wanted to show, like the podcast. We literally sat here for half an hour before we recorded this one, and we're still having some problems.
Yeah.
But it's all out in the open. So is all the
Yeah.
first few episodes. We just got started.
Totally.
Let's do a podcast.
Yeah.
We don't have the right equipment, but
All right. I have a
Whatever.
good one. Do you
Okay.
want to make
Okay.
games? Learn math. It's like if you go to school and you go get a programming degree, you're going to come out knowing how to program, but you're not going to know how to make games, right?
At all.
Most people at all, right? Like
Yeah.
the minute you start doing any kind of real-time simulation of any kind, you need to know physics, you need to know a lot of math, and it's not like and I'm not like trying to scare people either. I'm not saying like, "Oh, lots
It's a
of
solvable
math."
problem. It's a
Like-
solvable problem. You can
But
learn it.
go look up linear algebra. Take a Udemy course on linear algebra. Read a book on linear algebra. That's like the thing. My
You need
favorite
vectors,
book.
You need matrices.
Vector. Wait, I would say you don't need matrices right off the bat, but you
That's
do need
fair.
to understand like 3D positioning
If you-
relations and stuff. Vectors
That's
for
fair.
sure.
If you're doing, yeah, I guess I was thinking like if you're doing your own graphics engine, it helps.
Most people aren't going to start writing
who
their
does
own
that?
graphics engine.
Don't
the-
follow
the-
my
one of the
advice.
best books that I ever read it's called Mathematics for Game Programming. I think it's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's really good. Like just straightforward. Here's how you do these things, in order of like what you need to know.
The Essential
is-
Mathematics? Is that the one you're talking
Is it-
about? The Morgan
I think
Kaufman
it's
book?
Essential Mathematics.
Essential Mathematics.
For games.
Yeah, I love that book. Yeah.
Well, specifically the for games one is really good.
Yeah. The Morgan
anyway.
Kaufman series is all for games.
So learn linear algebra and learn kinematics, which is like calculus-based physics, essentially. So maybe you took physics in high school. You almost certainly did not take linear algebra in high school. Almost no high school I've ever heard of offers linear algebra. But go learn that stuff. I've worked with people in my career who are experienced devs who don't have that experience and they can't do that stuff, right? But if you're going to be even in 2D games, right? Like I shot a bullet. Now what? Right? How do I make it move? How do I even represent its position on the screen?
Even that game Missile Command, that old game, like we used to always do that, where it's like, okay, well I've clicked here. How do I shoot the bullet here, but give it the speed of the normal bullet?
Yeah. Well, what's the angle that it needs to be rotated at, given that I've clicked here?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, those are all questions that you don't get from a high school education. You don't get from a regular programming course. Unless you took electives in math. So are you in college for programming? Get a math minor. Like go take the math classes. That's going to help you in your games career.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be really hard to go anywhere like serious in the games industry without that. I was in an interview today. They started right off with ray sphere intersection that I could. They expected me to know that off the top of my head.
How do you tell if two vectors are perpendicular? You better answer that quick. No, I wasn't actually questioning you.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna answer it. The dot product.
The dot product. The answer is always the dot product.
Yeah. The dot product is 1 if they're perpendicular.
Yeah.
my brother, I'm definitely not a game programmer.
Or -1, I guess.
No, it's 0 if they're perpendicular.
Oh, perpendicular. Yeah, I thought.
Sorry, not parallel.
If they're parallel, it would be
1 or -1. Yeah.
-1.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Y'all could have asked me that. I'd have told you. That
It
was
was-
obvious to me.
We both
but,
look foolish.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. This guy doesn't even know math.
Yeah. No, I'm no linear algebra expert, nor am I an expert game developer. But I do joke with my brother because he's in high school right now, and he's his junior year, and it's funny because he's in that phase where he's like doing all of this algebra, doing all this like trigonometry, and like any high school student, he comes home and he's like, this has like no real world value. Like I'll never use any of this. Like why do we have to learn this? And I'm like, see, that's why I think programming is cool, because it gives a purpose to this seemingly meaningless math that you're learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out, and you can make pretty good money with that math that you're
What am
learning
I
right
gonna
now.
use a
so.
variable
All right.
for?
Here's my very, very specific advice.
Okay.
Okay.
If you're in Algebra 2 Trig and you discover that the loaner TI-82 calculator they give you can program games on it, don't sit in the back of the class the entire semester programming games on it instead of learning linear algebra or Algebra 2 Trig and almost failing the class. That's unrelated to...
Yeah.
Or on the other hand, if that was very specific to you, do exactly that because it clearly worked out well for you.
True. I mean, it kind of like rooted that passion.
Learn cool stuff. Be responsible.
That's true. Do the class and then learn to program your calculator after class.
Like certainly you would never
homework.
say like, hey, you've got a job and you've got a job to do. But if you're reading cool books, that's okay if you don't do your job. You know, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
You know,
Heroes
I
Die
know
is pretty cool,
I know we're all joking.
Yeah.
I think that's good advice. I think that set of advice is gonna set you up for like success right off the bat in the games industry.
Yeah, I agree. The three, I think, really big piece of advice. I got to remember all of them now, but you gave three pretty big ones. One was the get started, and the second one.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Don't be afraid
to ask questions. And then there was a third one that you said that was awesome.
Learn math.
Yeah, learn math being one. There was one that you said earlier too that was really good. It was another one that we kind of reinforced earlier. I'm blanking now, but anyways, I feel like there was a lot of profound things in there that were really cool to hear from you because we talked more in this episode about like the things that I feel like in a lot of the other episodes, especially with the other guys, they've been super awesome to hear their stories too, but we focused a lot on the journey, and on this one I feel like it was a lot about tying your journey to actual good profound advice, which was really, really cool.
That's awesome,
I really like that. So anyways, that's really it. That's episode 21.
Episode 21.
Randy, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
That was so much for having me on.
Such a cool perspective. So
I hope
also,
people
if you
buy
want
your
to
book.
play a really cool
yes,
tabletop role-playing game that's super strategic, ZaphirGame.com.
I'm actually going to check this out.
Yeah.
Pretty excited.
We'll put it
It's
on
so
there.
beautiful. I worked with such good artists.
Was it you?
No.
I'm serious.
That's why
you got to check it out.
That's why it costs money.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
The art is really cool. I don't have the book. Sorry, I better buy it. I'm gonna be the first purchaser after this podcast episode.
I hope so.
Sorry about
You
that.
don't beat me to it.
No, I have to drive home.
Yeah, my computer's right here. Anyways, that's it. Episode 21. Randy, thanks for coming on, and
My
we'll
pleasure.
see.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see everybody next week.